All right, here he is, Wes Cage. What's going on, my man? Thanks for doing this. Appreciate it.
Hey, I'm honored to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, so you got a brand new song and a video out for the song The Wolf. I guess at this point it's about a month old. Co-written with Keith Wallen from Breaking Benjamin. And, you know, I thought it was a little bit of a departure from the first Wes Cage record, Prehistoric Technology, which I guess at this point is almost a decade old. I think that came out in like 2015. But The Wolf is certainly a little bit more active rock leaning, at least in my opinion, as opposed to most of everything from that first record.
Definitely. It's a tremendous departure. You know, I think that it'll sit nicely, especially for live shows. If I were to bring some of those, you know, Prehistoric Technology album songs and mix those in with The Wolf, I mean, it would be wonderful. And also, I'm working on more music constantly in the same style as well.
So was it intentional to take it a little bit more of a mainstream direction, perhaps so you could get some love from terrestrial radio and Octane, things like that?
Definitely. I thought it was time to really give the whole world something that could be, you know, accepted on the radio and everywhere. Also some film placement. You know, there's a track or two definitely on Prehistoric Technology where I was holding on to some pretty heavy riffs and stuff. But I think now we can still be heavy, but more active rock.
Yeah, I mean, The Wolf is, I mean, if you haven't heard it, I mean, my God, the song is super, super hooky. So I could definitely see some placement for that 100%.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, and also the using this as a platform to really express my my realizations and love for mysticism and spirituality. I think the world is ready for that right now.
So your manager at the time is Blasko, and for those unfamiliar, is Ozzy's bass player, was Ozzy's. We'll see if Ozzy ever goes back out. Also, obviously, previously bass player for Rob Zombie. How did that come about? How did you get connected with him and start working with him for management?
Well, I was blessed as a child to have you know, a friendship with Rob Zombie since he was friends with my dad, and whenever he was around, you know, I kind of considered him in my heart maybe like my extra uncle that was extra awesome that I loved having come over. I just always loved hearing him speak and spending time with him, and I continued being, you know, on some speaking terms with him as a teenager and adult. And one day it occurred to me, you know, why am I struggling so hard to look for the right manager? Why don't I just ask Rob, who he thinks is the best manager of all time? And he told me to meet with Blasko. And I mean, he couldn't have set up a better meeting. It was just an immediate connection with Blasko and I. And when I saw that he is both this legendary musician and manager, and that he has an artistic vision as a manager, I was like, all right, I would love to work with you, and it paid off.
Well, it's got to be nice having a manager who's a musician, because I would imagine that they can help you out creatively more than, you know, say a traditional manager who's really just, you know, business. And so he can kind of look at things, especially new music, from a different viewpoint as opposed to, you know, a typical manager.
Oh, absolutely. He can really get in there and do things other managers can. And also, since he's a musician, you know, even though I'm a composer, and if someone said to me, you know, make something sound lighter, that's what a lot of people say, lighter or deeper. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? You know, as a musician. But Blasko could literally tell me, yeah, take this out of this scale, go double harmonic minor, or change this, change that. And I could literally understand what he would want to do.
And was it Blasko that got you hooked up with Keith Wallen to co-write this song?
Yes. So Blasko basically, you know, I had gotten to know everyone at Pavement, and Blasko set up a series of writing sessions for a deal to do a track that Pavement would promote. And Blasko arranged the session between me and Keith Wallen, and that's when The Wolf was created.
Was there any other potential songwriters that were going to be involved, or was it always just Keith right off the rip?
Keith right off the rip. It was always one-on-one sessions.
That guy writes some good songs, and he's got a lot of history writing songs for, I mean, a ton of bands.
Yeah. He's an incredible songwriter, and the session was extremely fluid. Luckily, I'm glad I did it in my 30s, because I've my songwriting is continuously evolving, and that's one thing I love. Where it's like, at least for me with music, I notice a lot of people, they complain about what kind of degradation happens when we get older, but I feel like when we get older, we get better musically, for sure.
I'll show you mature a little bit and become a little wiser and all that kind of stuff.
Definitely.
So, like we were talking earlier, quite a bit of a departure from your solo stuff, but also from your old band, Eyes of Noctum, which with that band, I think there was just one record, in Septum, which came out in 2009. But you've said before that there's a second record, I believe, that is totally finished, but was never released, according to you. Very, very dark, I believe, a lot darker than the first one. And but it's still yet to see the light of day. And I think you had said at one point that's because you and partially because you and the guitar player from that band are not on very great terms. Is that the reason why that second record is not out yet?
Well, we honestly, because that record is so, I mean, it is literally absolutely terrifying, that record, especially because the lyrics and the musicality are so enigmatic, and it's like the eeriest story too, the concept album. But I did reach out to that individual that's the guitarist, and we reconciled. I kind of yeah. So I just because I've been talking about it again, I reached out to him and reconciled, and we talked about what it would, potentially what that would be like if we were to release that, just so that Eyes of Noctum fans could have that. I know a lot of people know about this record, and it hasn't been released, and it's I know a lot of people are kind of upset about that, knowing that there really is a full-blown record that was done, passed by Frederick Nordstrom again too. I mean, it's just that record, that the topic of it is insanity, so it's very cerebral. And I remember when we finished that album, I thought to myself, I hope no one does mushrooms and reads the lyrics and listens to this, because that's an instant trip to the mental hospital.
Is this something that could come out in 2024 possibly, or are you wanting to just focus on what you got going on now with just the Wes Cage solo stuff, and focus on that for a little bit, and then when things start settling down, shift things over to another project? Or is there any sort of timeline?
Well, I was thinking about, what we could do if maybe I could put it into, if I could release it somehow, of course not as Wes Cage, but if I could make almost like an animated movie to go along with it, that it could be attached to or something. Because I would love to see, I mean, my vocal performance on the second Eyes of Noctum album absolutely smokes my performance on the first Eyes of Noctum record. I also had bronchitis during that record, so my high-pitched screams weren't, I mean, people still like them, but they weren't like they are on this really shrieky, gritty record.
Well, and you were probably, like 18, 19 years old or something when you did that first record?
I was just turned 17, like 16th, and then I was 19 during the second Eyes of Noctum record.
So do you think if this record ever does come out, since so much time has passed, does anything need to be revisited, or is everybody content with the way that it was left whenever it was finished all those years ago?
Well, I was thinking it might sound a little dated, and then I listened to it recently with my fiance, and we were just blown away by how timeless it sounded, and just it's Jesse Rowe, the lead guitar player for Eyes of Noctum. He wrote every single part of that record musically except for one riff I added. I do want to add some keyboard stuff because we wanted to make this record really atonal and creepy. So it was hard to find kind of a majestic, beautiful orchestral parts to go with it. But I still want to put some really creepy choir and stuff in there. Maybe it could be released. It'd be interesting.
Would that band ever tour again? Would you ever do anything in a live setting, or is that really just a studio thing at this point, if just for this next record?
Probably a studio thing, unless you know,
the money's right.
yeah. That, and if someone wanted to do something crazy, like, you know, a one-time guest appearance reunion at like Inferno Festival in Norway or something. But
so you've said before you've credited Aleister Crowley and his writings with saving your life. Well, I want to know. I know specifically Magic in Theory and Practice, which I want to get into for a second. But just more, I guess, in a more broad sense, what was it specifically about Aleister Crowley's work that spoke to you?
I think it's because of the fact that Aleister Crowley was such a universal and all-encompassing occultist and teacher, and he knew just about everything that had to do with this this path that we call mysticism. I saw. I mean, my father did give me a book of Aleister Crowley that's from 1929. It's still like my most prized material possession, and I started working with it. I remember he said, "Learn this and then show me how to do it." And then I started applying this magic, and it worked instantly. And with stuff that was just like jaw-dropping moments of confirmation and stuff. And I started to elevate myself out of, you know, what I was before and into what I am now spiritually with that book specifically.
The book being Magic in Theory and Practice, right?
Yes.
Which I think, so you've applied some of that to your life. And I think at one point you said now, you know, from reading that and practicing what's in there, and I'll be honest with you, I'm so not in touch with that world. I know nothing about it. But you've said that when you practice that in your own life, now, you know, whenever you ask for something, the universe, so to speak, brings you a door to open. Is that right?
100%. Very quickly, too. I mean, I just recently spoke with a group about Hermeticism, which I know Aleister Crowley was very involved in, and all things Egyptian mysticism. And literally an hour before that meeting I did, a car pulls up in front of me with the license plate Egypt 2. I'm just like, wow. Oh, wow, it's just like so quick. But it took me a while to the book at first, you know, there's all these formulas and stuff, and it is very much so a science, and it might not make sense to the reader at first. It didn't make sense to me at first. I was like, what am I looking at here? But then when the book starts to make sense, it's almost like you're reading a language that you just learned, and then this stuff starts to work. You know, I've used this to very much so open doors. I only had 10 minutes to speak yesterday. I didn't get to tell everyone kind of how very much so the best way to make the magic really work, though, is like once you have a postulation or some intention that you're trying to manifest, to really start making actions towards it. And that's when it will work rapidly. So like if someone's like wanting to have more abundance or something like that, opening up a bank account, even if you're only putting $5 in there, that's letting the universe know to kind of send that. So it's powerful stuff.
And is this sort of along the lines of like what your dad had asked you to learn and then teach him how all of this works?
Yeah, I think because my dad's naturally very just evolved spiritually, and I definitely got that from him when I was little. People, you know, they would ask my parents, "What is it? Your kid like? Is he like an indigo child, or what's going on there with all the spiritual stuff he's talking about?" And I think my dad wanted, because my grandpa was a scholar and academic, and he thought Crowley was a genius, and my grandfather himself was a genius. So I think that my dad wanted to get into it again with me, because he is really the one that brought me to philosophy and mysticism. And I think Crowley, he made his own style, Thelema. So he was basically letting me know, like, whatever you get from this, show me.
So was it your dad and your family's background that sort of kind of fascinated you with all of this stuff to begin with? Or was there, did you kind of find it on your own and then start having, conversations about it?
I think when I was younger, I was a little overly empathic, very sensitive, and I was aware of the spiritual, both positive and negative elements of it. And then also every single house I grew up in had paranormal activity. So that also drew me closer to spirituality, because, I was experiencing things with people who, like, for example, the keyboard player for Eyes of Noctum was like more than atheist. He was like just super nihilistic, only ones and zeros, science only. And even he couldn't walk down a hallway because of the dark spiritual energy that was in it, in a haunted mansion my family had owned. And I was like, well, then why don't you want to walk down it if you don't believe there's anything? And he's like, well, I just, I'm like, yeah, exactly. But, yeah, it definitely, my parents both opened me up to it. My mom, maybe more so on the herbal side. Like she knows the herb for almost everything. And that brought me to another knowledge as well.
So when you decide, that you kind of want to go down that rabbit hole and kind of start living your life that way, what are the first steps that you would take, to start shaping your life to be based around that stuff?
Definitely to choose your first path, because when you go into mysticism, like when it's done right, you're going to have every medium and every avenue of mysticism from every culture in there, and they're all connected to one amazing thing. But I would say the first would be to choose what interests you first, and then to definitely prepare yourself to be in tune and connected with those energies that you're studying about by, it could be sometimes fasting helps, sometimes it could be exercise like a yoga or some kind of practice that gets you in tune with those rhythms and stuff. And creativity or doing what you love is one of the best ones, I think. But so yeah.
The one thing that I find so commendable about you and your career is that, while everybody does know, that your dad is Nicolas Cage, your great uncle is Francis Ford Coppola, but you don't ever make it a point to be like, hey, look who I am. You've sort of, carved out your own path. And I would have to imagine that is a very intentional move on your part to, I don't know if separate yourself is the right word, but, just say, hey, look, fuck you. I can have my own lane,
Thank you so much for noticing. I appreciate that. It's definitely something I wanted to do. As a teenager, some people were just shocked that I chose not only, a metal genre, but the most extreme and grimmest, notorious one. And I wasn't, stopping at just making black metal records at home and stuff like that. I really went to Norway and was befriending people that, some individuals are freaked out about. But, I lived and breathed that for a long time. And I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad I chose that, because it just has added so much to me as a person and an artist,
Well, and it's, I guess it's similar to, like a super group, or when somebody in a band and a huge band, and then they go form another band, and it's like, whatever band featuring so-and-so from whatever other band. And, people don't care. They're like, oh, I just want to see your main band. But they make it a whole thing. Like, this band is featuring this guy from that band. So when you go out on your own, it's almost, I would imagine, like there's a little bit less pressure, and you can kind of be yourself a little bit more because you don't feel tied or attached to something else other than just yourself.
Definitely. And it's amazing how coming to the authentic self has been so powerful for me as an artist, because I love black metal, but I've always loved new age, and I've always loved new metal as well. So like System of a Down is the band that made me actually want to become a musician and pick up a guitar finally that was electric. And my love for new age, or like Enya and stuff like that, those kind of Celtic vibes. I mean, some people might not notice it right away with the wolf, but that melody is very much so kind of that Nordic Celtic vibe in the chorus.
So real quick before we wrap this up, obviously you do some acting yourself, of course. I think you've had a few projects released recently. Is there anything coming up going into 2024 acting wise that you're able to talk about right now?
Yeah, I think there's a film called Crescent City and Boneyard. I did some music for Crescent City as well. These are going to be pretty epic. These are very extraordinarily. They're actually similar in many ways, but they're very dark films regarding crime and horrors that are very realistic.
And those are coming out. That movie's coming out in 2024.
Yeah.
Who else is in that? Anyone might recognize their names?
Alec Baldwin is in Crescent City.
Oh, no kidding! Wow.
And also Terrence Howard. And one thing that I was just shocked about is I've always loved Terrence Howard's look and his eyes, the intensity of his eyes, but I had no idea that man is an absolute bona fide academic genius too. Though he's into science that it's like a new realm of. I never thought about some of the stuff that he was talking about. It's just fascinating.
Man, Terrence Howard, I know that. Where do I know him from?
Terrence Howard was what's his most notable? I do remember he was the bad guy that in the Big Mama's house, with the blue eye.
Okay, yeah.
That I bring that one up because that's the film I saw where I was like, whoa, that guy's a powerful looking entity.
And Alec Baldwin is in this too. I would imagine is this done filming or no?
Yes, it is. It was nice because the song that was requested of me to put into this was a black metal song. So yeah. So it was fun to get back to doing that, to incorporate blast beats, which I haven't used a blast beat in maybe it's like 12 years or something. So
wow.
Playing the blast beats was pretty wild.
And I would imagine this would be Alec Baldwin's first movie since the whole Rust thing.
Yes.
Wow, it's just so crazy that whole thing was, mind-boggling to even wrap your head around it.
Yeah, it's terrifying. It goes to show how you're whoever's in charge of armory, even if you're using a airsoft pistol or cap gun, you have to have the person just say it's clear, it's hot, it's cold, all that stuff. I mean, even if people are rolling their eyes thinking that the person in charge of that is overly anal and strict and stuff, it's just like the accident prevention is so important. And it upsets me that sometimes like that when the law is being unintelligent and trying to hold an actor liable for something that isn't in their department. Yeah, that can it's obnoxious.
Well, sure, and I'm sure working with him on this movie with everything going on, I mean, he had to be a ginormous ball of stress. I mean, it was just a fucking crazy situation, you know.
I definitely feel for him. He was super polite and such a kind man, and really loves his family. I think he has 7 children, and he was always
Jesus.
talking about how happy he is to be a father. And there have been a couple times where people have tried to make films where they want him and I to play like relatives before, so that'd be interesting.
Is there a would you say that this movie's called Crescent City?
Crescent City,
Is
yeah.
there a release date for it, or not yet?
Not yet. It should be quick though. I don't. I didn't do much for it, but what I did do for the film, I think, is going to really be pivotal.
I'm looking forward to checking it out. As we wrap this up, musical-wise, what can we expect from Wes Cage going into 2024? I'm assuming there's going to be a new record, a full record, I should say.
There will definitely be a new record. I luckily pump out songs very quickly, so I might be into releasing something that's extended length, or a couple works of art that would be musical and would be back to back.
And I think I had heard in some other interviews there is some plans to take this out on the road. Is that right?
Yes, I have been wanting to play for so long. I would definitely need to do like a good 3 weeks of just strict vocalist, athletic vocalist lifestyle, where I'm doing cardio day and not eating acidic stuff or smoking cigars anymore, and get back up to speed.
Well, Wes, thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, man.